Thank y'all for being here. It takes the DTS folks, I guess, to make us go over fire. We want to thank y'all for being here to celebrate Mr. Noah Phillips. He's got 3 questions that he's been tasked to answer in 30 minutes with us here this morning, sorry. Who does he aspire to be as a teacher? What cool things has he done at Penn State to become a better one? And how's he going to maximize his student teaching internship at Fort Cherry out in the West here in the spring? He has 30 minutes to answer those questions. Those of you who are online will ask for questions at the end, as well as those of you here in the audience for about 10 minutes at the end. So please think of those questions and be ready to ask those. For those of you online, we'll ask you to put them in the chat, and our graduate student live will help communicate that to the rest of us. No, they're all yours.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Curry. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. In that pause of awkward silence, I thank you for allowing me to feel like a zoo habitat and be awkwardly watched. But I thank you for coming to my final presentation. There's a QR code here, as well as on the handouts. If you would like to follow along, there's some resources that were a little difficult to put on the slides, so it's easier to access on your phone. So, okay. So a little bit about me. I know most of you, but I don't know how much you truly know about me. So my background is heavily involved in agriculture. I didn't have the opportunity to be an FFA when I was in high school. My school was too small to have one, or that's what they told us. So I'm just gonna roll with it. But I was in 4-H. I showed dairy cattle, swine, and market lambs, as well as I was a dairy ambassador for 8 years. When I started when I was 12, traveled around the state. Generally within the program, they don't really let 12-year-olds like leave the county, but I was fortunate enough that to have support that I was just talking with my mom, and we remembered we put 110,000 miles on a car in a year. So it was quite the extensive amount of travel. And I had to throw it up there. I spent time in our shop classes in high school, heavily involved in metal and woodworking. I have a welder at home, some of my free time hobbies. And I have to add a special appreciation to the people who helped get me here. I'm lucky enough to have 2 families, one biological and one chosen. I just want to thank them all for being here. They couldn't all make it, but I truly appreciate it. So my student philosophy. My philosophy is that agricultural education holds a high value of having a successful society. If everyone knows where their food comes from and is able to correctly identify how to produce their own food, I feel like our society would benefit so much more than where it stands today. In teaching, I believe that students should be heavily involved in agriculture, because not only does agriculture rely on other content areas such as mathematics and science, but those content areas also rely on agriculture, and everything can be applied throughout. And always the best way to learn, especially for myself, is hands-on. So that hands-on ability for students to learn, not only sitting in a classroom, learning through a lecture, but also being able to immerse their hands in the material. That, along with teaching them about production agriculture rather than lecture type agriculture, and actually being able to apply what they know in a legitimate setting, would be the most beneficial to making that successful society. So how I would manage my philosophy statement is with the 3 posters behind me, my classroom management plan. I have my classroom expectations: be respectful, be determined, be thoughtful, be sincere, be cooperative. I also have procedures for how we match these expectations and how my class functions successfully from the beginning to the end. Be on time, be prepared, complete your bell work, be in your seat and ready to go. And Fort Cherry's cell phone rule is that if teachers choose to use them, they're there. Otherwise, they should be silenced in a way. So that is very much I mean, we have computers in our pockets. There isn't a reason to limit students on being able to use those, but making sure that they know the correct times to use them would be the most beneficial. And lastly, the classroom consequences. Hopefully, I have a great batch of kids at Fort Cherry, so the limitations of having to use this are low, but verbal warning, then they'll have a one-on-one conversation with myself. Then I'll have to call home, discuss with their parents, and then as Fort Cherry's student conduct rules apply, I can give them a lunch detention with myself or a teacher detention after school for a half hour where I have them think about the expectations and try and figure out how to be a better student in my classroom. And then lastly, if it were to reach the limit, disciplinary referral to the office for misconduct.
Nice.
So I would use these 3 posters in my ideal program curriculum. So I actually took inspiration from Paige, my cohort members, cooperating center. I very much like the intro to ag, which would be 9th graders. I hopefully will be in a school one day that I will be able to see all the 9th graders in the building. Kind of difficult, but being able to immerse them in that from a very young age would be the most beneficial, because then I could hopefully get them to take agriculture 1, 2, and 3. In an ideal setting, they'd take intro to ag in 9th grade, agriculture 1 in 10th grade, agriculture 2 in 11th, and in 12th grade, they would take agriculture 3. And then these are the content areas that we would work into throughout the 4 classes. Several of these would have multiple units within the block, but for example, the vet science would be 2 units, primarily a small animal unit and a large animal unit. And it really just helps immerse students in any possible curriculum there is to further that high society that I was discussing earlier. So, as I said, I very much enjoy metalworking, woodworking. So in my time, I have the opportunity to make a project that I would make in my future shop class if I were to have one. So I made a metal chalice. I try and make myself the best organized person I can be. Most of the time I am not. So typically this sits in my room and I put my keys and any spare change I have in it, because if I didn't put the keys in the cup, I wouldn't be able to find them. So it's a very nice organizational task. And the best thing about this is you don't need to buy excessive amount of material. It's upcycling spare materials. How I made this was gathered nuts and a bolt and brazing equipment. So you need a acetylene torch and a welder, and constructed the cup through brazing the bolt and welding, or brazing the nuts and welding the bolt. Furthermore, integrating supervised agricultural experiences into the classroom is very beneficial for the students to see how they can use agriculture, not only within the classroom, but also outside of it. So to do this, I would construct or have the students help me build a hydroponics or aquaponics system in which they can pick the fish that go in the tank of the aquaponics unit. These could be catfish or another variety that they could also use to sell to possibly make a fundraiser for the program, as well as growing vegetables up top for the cafeteria, so they can see the agribusiness side of agriculture more in depth and hands-on. FFA integration in my classroom. Like I said, did not come from an FFA chapter. So the FFA part of the 3-circle model of classroom, SAE, and FFA are something that's very new, very complex to me. But the way I would do this to help communication and leadership would be to have student leaders. So that for a teacher for a day, they would meet with me, they would build their ideal lesson for the day, and then they would teach it. They would have the opportunity to stand in front of their classmates and make sure they can work on their effective communication and leadership. And of course, encourage FFA participation. And I always got to refer back to dairy because I grew up in the dairy industry. So coaching a CDE team in dairy evaluation would be one of the ways I would integrate FFA. So to do that, to market my program, to make sure that I connect with every student there is, no matter what the diversity is, I really like the motto that National FFA has adopted, agriculture for all education. Just make sure that it reaches out to students no matter where they come from, rural, urban, suburban, no matter what their background is, whether they grew up on a farm, whether they didn't, and making sure that they have just as much of a quality agricultural education experience as someone who might have grown up on a farm, or the typical agricultural student of they milk the cows before they come to school, and then they go home and milk the cows after they go to school. So to market this project, I would use social media posts because young kids these days are always on their phone. I am guilty of that as well. So that's why I figured this would be the best way to do this. TikTok page really helps show what the kids are doing. Twitter posts, I know that's more for the community to see because not too many 12-year-olds are on Twitter, but then Instagram, because that's the new thing that everybody checks out. And if any student can see what the ag department is doing on Instagram, and that gets them intrigued to take my program, then that's what I'm here for. And then, of course, to have any good ag program, you need to have community involvement and make sure that the community supports you as well as you're supporting the community. So to work off of that, the community integration and involvement, I have made a composting unit that I would be working with the Washington County Conservation District. They have a new program for high school and farmers, more or less, the 40-year-olds that are out there working in the industry every day, and they come together, they work together, and they build that further. So if I can contact them and help them help me to teach composting farther, because I'm not a wizard at composting, but the conservation district might just have materials that can help me. So how have I got here today? There's 3 courses that I really want to highlight. I encourage the undergraduate students to take. Those would be Psychology 100, Animal Science 201, and Ag Seed 160. Psychology really helped me to develop how to connect with my students on a different level, reaching past what their background is, or maybe being able to connect with that troubled student just a little bit more and making sure that they're attentive and they're focused and they feel appreciated and valued, as well as making sure everyone feels that they hold a spot in my agricultural program. And of course, I thought I knew content area well until I took 201 with Dale, and he opened my eyes to how much more there is to know on animal science content. And ethics is always something, tying into the last one, something I always found interesting, and to be able to take a class focused on the ethics of agriculture and be able to sit down and talk with multiple different perspectives about the animal industry, the plant industry. All of this was eye-opening in the ability to experience so many different perspectives. I also had the opportunity to work with a group of classmates, and we made a project to make sure that products that are shipped to houses for, you see the ads for have your meals delivered to your doorstep. We worked on a project that can be implemented in the industry for how to make sure that those products stay healthier and stay fresher longer. My undergraduate minor includes hold on. Sorry, got ahead of myself. My minor is international agriculture. This helped me open my eyes to the whole world of agriculture all around the globe, as well as my multiple certifications. You can see here, I have my Surf Safe, food handler, NSTMOP. I know it's a mouthful, it's half the alphabet. That's National Safe Tractor and Machine Operating Program, beef quality assurance, and I did an artificial insemination training program with Select Sires. I'm also 10-hour OSHA certified, so I can make sure that students and individuals are being safe, as well as I'm also first aid and CPR certified, so that when they commit OSHA violations, I'll be there to help them. Although I do ask, do not get hurt on an elevated surface because I don't do heights. My next step is my professional development. I was able to attend the World Food Prize in Des Moines, Iowa, last fall. That really opened my eyes to being able to see the global climate change that has happened all around us, around the globe. I also, just a few weeks ago, attended Phoenix, Arizona for the 75th anniversary of NAAE, which is National Association for Agricultural Educators. We sat through a week of workshops that really opened my eyes, that had agricultural teachers around the world teaching these workshops. It wasn't random people, it was people who have done the program, who have had the material, and they handed it to us. I was also a goals participant, Global Orientation for Agricultural Learning, in the fall of last year, which has helped get me to the World Food Prize. That program also allowed me to travel to Minnesota for a week to teach agriculture with Brandon. And then, of course, my two fraternities, my two Greek organizations, Delta Theta Sigma and Alpha Tau Alpha. So my internships, work experiences, and global engagement connections. Like I said, I didn't come from FFA, but I have spent years in the industry. As you can see, there's quite the list of references that I can put on my application. Lily Hollow Holsteins, I worked basically working on everything, milking cows, feeding calves, machine operation. I was also a calf feeder on a 500 cow dairy, a farmhand at 1,100 cow dairy in northern PA, a 4-H intern, cattle hoof care intern, because making sure that the feet stay under animals is always ideal, because if they can't walk, they can't eat, and they can't make milk. As well as I was an assistant herd manager for the last 2 summers, and I am a part of the GTAN Global Community Hub that connects the agricultural industry all across the world, so that I have the ability to contact anyone to further my global connection. So working off global connection, my diversity for learners. Like I said, I had the opportunity to teach at West Central Area High School for a week in global climate change and food security, as well as I attended the World Food Prize. I've also I had the ability to take part in a culturally responsive teaching conference, and I have experience with English language learners. I've worked on multiple farms that had Spanish-speaking employees, so I had the ability to further my knowledge of how to connect with someone and be able to express what I need done and what they need me to do much better than if I didn't have this experience. And then, of course, classroom observations in ELL classrooms that showed the diversity of how complex it is for students to learn. So as of January, my cooperating center will be Fort Cherry. This is in Western PA, as Dr. Curry said. I like to call it the gem of Washington County, more or less because Erica Teagarden went to the rival high school. So I just needed to make sure that she knew. So Mrs. Hoover is the agricultural teacher there. She teaches about 85 students in her program, has 2 different greenhouse. One is focused on plant production, so hanging baskets, floral design, and the other one is focused on there's a hydroponics unit, a hydroponic system, and an aquaponics system. So students are able to immerse themselves in a wide variety of different content area. So working off Fort Cherry, something that they do really well is they have a strong connection to the community. They make sure that their community stakeholders know what the students are doing, as well as contributing to what the students can do. And they also are very good at, Mrs. Hoover is exceptional at her classroom instruction, her FFA involvement, in which she has 97 active members in her FFA chapter, HG Parkinson, and 100% of students have SAE projects, supervised agricultural experiences. Areas to be improved. Although they do it well, she more tracks the standard agricultural student. So the one that grew up on the farm or the one who does hunting and fishing, they don't really have a whole lot of wide diversity because it is a rural area, but there are towns. So one way I plan to help them is market their program better, making sure that they reach those students on the social media platforms that I was talking with earlier, making sure that students know the opportunities that sit within their own school that they might not have yet taken advantage of. As well as, although they do have 100% of SAE projects for students, only about 80% of these students actually finish their project. So hopefully, if I can encourage those students to increase that number and get it to 100% of projects and 100% of completion, would look exceptional for Mrs. Hoover. This is the bell schedule for Fort Cherry. So I have 8 periods, and 7 periods and a prep period. The middle, it gets kind of tricky because I've been there several times and I still don't know when I eat lunch. And lunch is kind of important to me. And I want to teach kids on an empty stomach. But it's going to be a little bit of a trial period because 7th and 8th, 9th and 10th, and 11th and 12th all change what periods they have. And it's a very complex system that Mrs. Hoover has tried to diagram for me a couple of times. And I'm only about 80% sure of what that looks like. So I have 19 units prepared to teach at Fort Cherry through the 7 different classrooms: ag leadership, vet science, intro to ag, animal science, ag marketing, horticulture, and floral design. Every student has to take intro to ag before they take the other 6 classes, before they have the opportunity to take the other 6 classes. So there is mainly 9th graders, but there are some 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And then the other ones are, the ag leadership is mainly seniors. I won't really have them too much because they'll be applying for their national FFA scholarship and then be preparing for NOCTI. And Mrs. Hoover has told me that this is a very important thing. So she told me I can watch, but as for my involvement with the NOCTI, since I'm not really have that FFA background, I'm here for the content area. And then vet science, 2 units. And if on the QR code, if you scan that at the beginning or on the handout, you can further search, look at one of these unit plans. So my strengths, I would say I'm a hard worker. I strive on being able to get the job done. I'm not very good at multitasking, which also leads to my task-oriented behavior. I get one thing done at a time and then move on to the next thing. If I try and put too many in one cup, the cup overfills very fast. I can also work with a team very well. I pride myself on my communication and networking abilities. I believe I could walk up to anybody and have a conversation about anything. That's something I pride myself on. It also comes from my love of talking, as everyone has told me. And the task-oriented behavior that I was talking about, my areas to improve. I'm sure many people can contribute for where I need to improve. My time management abilities need to be a little more effective. I can get the job done. The process of watching it, you might not want to because it's a little chaotic, but making sure I've set myself timelines for when to get stuff done. As I did for my unit plans, I set myself timelines and checkpoints to make sure I was adequately had enough time to make sure my content was presentable and effective for the students to not hold them back, as well as my patience. I've worked very hard on myself, making sure that I was the best teacher possible, the best teacher I can be. But my patience, as my family and both my families can attest to, sometimes is a little short. It's something I've worked very hard on, and it's something I pride myself on, how far I've come. But as always, there's always room to improve. To finally wrap it up, I just want to give a thank you to my 8 cohort members that I've gone through, my 7 other cohort members. There was 8 of us in total. My cohort members that have helped me through this process, making sure that we kept each other up to date on our checklist, doing check-ins with each other, making sure that we were using our time effectively, and always being there for when one of us had a mental crisis and we just needed someone to talk to, because that's always important. I just want to thank you all for coming, and I will hand it back to you guys for the questions. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we're gonna go to questions now, so please put those in the chat for our online audience. I'll get us started, Noah. I'll take a little bit of liberty from your philosophy statement to the extent that you basically said that agricultural literacy is really, really important for society. And I would love for you to expand upon that as to why that is the case and what you plan to do about it as a profession.
My philosophy on agricultural literacy actually stems from one of Dr. Curry's classes himself, A204N, showing the possibility of how far agricultural literacy can go for students and even people who are past school. I believe that making sure not only that they're literate in the ability to comprehend and do a task, but making sure where they know their food comes from, where they know where their technology comes from, or even where their gas comes from, because one of the leading contributors to gas is ethanol, and ethanol is made from corn. So once again, we come back to farmers. So making sure that everyone is agriculturally literate and making sure that they can, for one, know where their stuff comes from, and for 2, in-depthly explain it.
No, a comment and a question. So the comment, and I want to say kudos to you and your group for how you all elevated the importance of a marketing campaign when it comes to advocating for agriculture. That's something that my group has been at the state level passionate about. And so I think we're in good hands when we talk about this next generation. My question for you is this, with you not being in an FFA, right? And I know you mentioned 4-H. In your high school career, what professional development did you seek out or have a chance to experience? Can you share that with us?
Yes. So one way I furthered my professional development event was through dairy promotion. I know I had mentioned I was a dairy ambassador. I hadn't really explained further on that. So that professional, I sat through workshops to further content on the dairy industry so that I could take it out into the public. And then I would also make community stops at festivals, at fairs, or stopping in at elementary schools. And the clothes was very much, I was wearing suits since I was 12. So this feels as much just regular clothes as otherwise, because dairy promotion helped me in that ability of public speaking, connecting with the community, and my professional development.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Dr. Foster?
Noah, I'd like you to tell me an example of how you would integrate academics into your agricultural classroom to successfully reinforce, support, and complement the efforts of your colleagues in your school building teaching math, science, and English.
So I would implement academics in my classroom through various different units. For example, I will use my composting unit. They will be building composting boxes. So making sure that they design out all their design for their box, and making sure they use those math skills, for example, for angles, for measurements, for general construction, making sure that I could connect with the math teacher to make sure that the geometry teacher, sorry, to possibly come down or use some of his parts of correct angles of, I don't know, I sat through geometry, but possibly proofs of how to correctly create a composting box.
Thank you.
We have a question from Audie Cherry. He asks, what strengths and weaknesses do you bring to the table by not having had an FFA background?
So I'll start with the weaknesses. Well, not weaknesses, my areas to improve. Obviously, for one, the FFA content in general, being able to know what I'm teaching the students for introduction to agriculture when we get to FFA, as well as all the different competitions. That's something that I need to refresh on, making sure I know, because there are a wide variety of scholarships and competitions within FFA, and making sure that I know that students have those and are utilizing those experiences would be the best beneficial. My strengths come from, since I wasn't in FFA, I spent a lot of time in industry. So bringing that content knowledge that they can use in those competitions, as well as the leadership to correctly coach CDE teams, or finding someone who can correctly coach a CDE team.
I know I'm gonna hop in real quick, because in that presentation on FFA integration, what I heard is that you're only gonna coach a dairy evaluation team. So I would like for you to tell me, how do you determine which of the smorgasbord of FFA program and opportunities that your program will engage in at the local level?
Apologies, I did not mean that I would only be teaching their evaluation team. That was just an example of the content I had that I could teach, that I could coach a CDE their evaluation team. I obviously don't know everything. So to make sure that those students are getting that knowledge and getting that experience, I wouldn't try to coach every CDE team. I would find community members or community leaders, community involvement in general, that could step into that role and coach that CDE team in a content area that they know the best, and making sure that I utilize every resource I have to make sure that students receive a high quality education.
But how do you determine which events you're going to engage in, Noah?
That's
What-
student, that
What
would be
informs that decision?
student choice. If I have an individual that comes to me and says they want to participate in creed speaking, then I would either myself help them or find someone that would help them with their public speaking abilities and memorization for the creed speaking. Or if I had a team come to me for a horse evaluation, I would be very happy to, for one, bring that new program into my area, as well as finding someone that can correctly teach them.
I know this is my last question, I promise. What does it mean though then that FFA is intracurricular, if we stay on this thread? What is it? What is the connection between FFA and the curriculum you're teaching in your program?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, sir. What does it mean when we say that FFA is the only intracurricular organization according to Public Law 740-42, I believe, according to Congress? So what does that mean? How does curriculum influence how we engage with the FFA youth organization?
So FFA is a intracurricular organization because it not only helps students outside of the classroom, but it also helps them within it, building those leadership, communication, team working abilities, as well as allowing students to make connections from content to their math class, to their science class, and being able to implement the stuff they use in their academic classes in the ag program and in the FFA organization in general.
So Noah, obviously you're really strong in animal science, and as an ag teacher, things are always changing. Community interest is changing. You always have to stay on top of things. What's a area that you already know for improvement, not your time management skills, that you are excited to dive into for professional development?
So an area I'm excited to dive into for professional development is, as you had mentioned, I'm very strong in science. I also pride myself on my ag mechanics abilities and my biotechnology uh, uh, comprehension. I am very excited to look into horticulture, aquaponics, hydroponics, and crop production. So very plant science, because that's not quite an area that I focused on. So being able to spend that professional development furthering my knowledge of plant science and everything it has to offer is something that, for one, I've already taken steps forward to, as well as I will continue to do. Celia?
So you mentioned one of your goals for Fort Cherry is to increase the number of students that complete their SAE projects. Do you have a plan of how you're gonna approach this?
Yes, they have the opportunity to have, she has homeroom. It's a time that students can come and work on their SAE projects. So making sure that I'm there for the students to be able to check on me, I can check on them, making sure that we get those record books completed, making sure we get everything filed away correctly, as well as I'm spending time in one of my units, making sure that every student in that class has their SAE project book up to date or completed.
I'm gonna ask one, okay? So Noah, you're Chalice. We know that you are teaching a hands-on skill of brazing, right? The rest of the folks in this room don't have the pleasure of looking at your entire lab management plan that you turned in on Canvas like I do. What other knowledge or skills or even work dispositions are you teaching through that project or other projects that you might teach, whether that's metalworking or woodworking, etc.? So what else are you teaching students through a project like that?
So besides the ability to make a change or teach LS, it teaches them something I pride myself in: task-oriented behavior, following a procedure from the first step to the last step, so that way students don't come to me and say, well, this is only half done and it looks like half the cup. As well as measurement and organization abilities to foster that skills for a project like this. Logan?
I think one of the biggest challenges going into a classroom is teaching students with very different backgrounds in agriculture and different education levels and experience levels. I know you touched on this before, but how do you plan on connecting with all of those levels of students, with the ones that come from, heavy agriculture background and the ones that are brand new?
Thank you. So I would aim to connect to every student through one, getting to know the students, building that rapport, knowing the student on a personal level, being able to connect with them, not only just knowing their name, but knowing who they are. As well as an ag teacher, I have the opportunity to visit their SAE projects. So I have that further connection with them on something they're doing individually. I can connect with them at home, meet their parents, see where they come from, foster that rapport farther.
For you. Good job on the presentation, Noah. One thing about your student teaching placement is that it's very far from where home was or is for you. And so I'm curious, what is it, maybe one strategy or idea you have of how you can get connected and integrated into the Fort Cherry community in Washington County?
Thank you for the question. I plan to get implemented, or I plan to immerse myself in the community through one of the biggest organizations in the community, which is Farm Bureau, making sure that I connect with the people there, that they can further connect me into the community. Fort Cherry is very accepting. When I went down there the last time, I found a place to stay during my student teaching experience, as well as met several community stakeholders to put a face to a name, and really build that community and show them that I'm there to help them, and hopefully they are there to help me.
You said one of the things you want to work on is your patience. So how would you approach a comment like, brown cows produce chocolate milk, or your food comes from a grocery store, not from a farm? How would you approach a question or a comment like that for somebody that's very determined that that's true?
Thank you for the question. For someone who is very determined, as my experience in dairy promotion has shown me, if they're so determined that they're not willing to open their eyes and listen, the only thing I can do is provide them with additional resources. Maybe someone who just makes that comment half-handedly or just there. I can show them that content area. I can connect with them personally and show them or take them on a tour of where their food comes from. So they see it's not the grocery store, it's the dairy farm down the road or the poultry barns across the street, making sure that they have that immersion of, oh, this is where my eggs come from and it's not the grocery store.
Can you help us in thanking Mr. Phillips?